What gifts have been brought to me? Once again, this vampiric relic is in the proper hands of LordeStarfox and, of course, the Midnight Society. Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Still warm, just the way I like it. My creatures of the night, who dares awaken me from my slumber? The Cryptid Huntress, aka Jessica Jones, has again found her way into the darkness of the fox den, and she did even save us some time by collecting some contracts that were owed to me that I grow tired of waiting for. Tonight, we have so many things to be talking about as we sit around the late night fire and burn the midnight timber into the early hours of the morning. Please give me a second to release myself from my silver chains and shackles so that Jessica Jones and, of course, LordeStarfox can take a walk into the madness. Are you ready to do this tonight, Jessica, or what?
Absolutely, LordeStarfox. I'm here for it.
I love it. It's great to sit down with you again. And to the audience, yes, Miss Jones here is going to be getting center stage for the majority of the episode, filling us in with some great things she's been working on, some things that she has upcoming, and also some of her thoughts on the good old missing people and what this Dogman like cryptid could be. Everyone knows that within the United States minus Alaska, that's a whole different nightmare. Every year, 1,100 to 2,400 people just vanish within the national forest. 5% are ever found. This does not mean they are found in ways sitting down and hanging out with us, like Miss Jones is. No, this could be more nefarious. Backpacks, belongings, or things much more sinister. So gnarly. Before we see what Jessica thinks about that nightmare fuel, recently I was introduced to a case. When I looked around the property from video and footage sent in, doesn't really seem logical as to why this very large tree branch was thrown basically like a javelin through this couple's trailer roof. They literally are woken up in the middle of the night, and this huge javelin-like tree branch has been thrown, it looked like, at the angle it came down. And Jessica has something very similar tonight. Well, Miss Jones, the stage is yours. What's happening with these missing people?
You know, the missing people, that's one of the main things I talk about when I go out and speak publicly to crowds. And, I'm a longtime Bigfoot and cryptid field researcher. And just recently, a matter of fact, I've done some expeditions around our national parks, state parks, and wildlife management areas around the South. And we had an incident recently, actually, where we had a tree knocked down in our camp during the night, right as I got hit with some infrasound. And so we're going to get to that story in just a second, because I do want to say that the missing persons cases are at epidemic proportional levels. I mean, it's really sad that we have so many people going missing out of our national parks every year. And I do cover that quite a bit on my channel. And I've done some remote viewing of that, of course. I've been given some targets. And there's something quite nefarious going on, I do believe. I mean, we even have a gentleman that's missing out of North Georgia right now. I think they've kind of given up on the search at this point, but a couple weeks ago, a man went missing off Blood Mountain, and he was a prominent attorney, a professor out of Dallas, I believe. But yeah, there's no trace of this man, no trace whatsoever. And that's the thing; these people are going missing without a trace. They've had dogs out there for the past couple of weeks. They've had, hundreds of search crews, search and rescue dogs and people, not a trace of this man anywhere. And, of course, there are people who saw him on the trail that day that he went missing. His vehicle was still there. The last anyone saw him was at the top of that mountain. And that was it. He's completely gone. So that's not normal. I mean, people ask me, well, do you think Bigfoots and Dogmen take these people? I can't say that I believe that. I think that it is 100% possible that they do. Maybe it's a very small portion of some of these missing people. But what I believe is they're walking into portals, or they're being kidnapped, or there's something more nefarious. Maybe it's got something to do with UFOs and ETs. I mean, it's quite the deep rabbit hole to go down, to be quite honest. Getting back to the WMA experience that I had recently. So I was in Alabama at this place. It's in the Talladega National Forest at a hunt camp. And I had been there back in July. I didn't know until I got there to this location that they were out there camping, because this was an area of very high strangeness. There were multiple Dogman reports out there, lots of Bigfoot activity, orbs and all of that. All sorts of weird stuff went on out there. And I was talking to my friend Mark, who had invited me out there, he and his wife. And he told me, he said, well, back in the 1980s, there was a hunter who was found over here, right behind that gate. He pointed to a gate right behind where we were sitting. He said he was found with his arm ripped off and his leg was contorted up behind his body. Nobody really ever knew what happened to him. But they've had all these Dogman sightings out there and the Bigfoots and stuff. And they just assumed it was probably a cryptid of some sort. I was almost kind of taken aback by that, because I wasn't expecting them to tell me that about that place. Well, fast forward to about 2 months ago, I got some of my crew together. I've got several different research teams and investigative teams that I go out with in the field. And I got some of my guys down from Tennessee, and some other guys came down from different parts of up north. And there's about 10 of us, I guess. And we decided to go down there and camp out right by that gate that he had told me about. And I saw it out there when I was in at that little camp out they had back in July. And so we camped out for the weekend, and we were planning on going up and hiking up behind this gate, and, just observing and seeing what all was out there. And by the way, when I was leaving back in July to go home. I live in Georgia, so I'm about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes from that location to my house. And I was driving out of this WMA that night back in July. I was by myself. I decided not to spend the night out there with the whole crew. I decided to go home. I liked my bed, and it was hot out there. So, but I got down the road. It was a very eerie drive out of there. I did not feel good. If my truck breaks down, okay, like this is not going to be good. And so when I finally got to the main road, and there was like some pavement, and I turned onto the main road, it was still out in the middle of nowhere, but I felt a little more at ease. And so I drove up the road, got to an intersection, 4-way stop. My GPS took me a different direction that I had come in from. And I thought, well, I'll trust the GPS, And so I kept going. And about a mile up the road or so, I saw eye shine on the side of the road. And as I'm pulling up closer to it, I kept thinking, that's a big old dog on the side of the road. And I got closer and closer. And then I saw this animal that was crouched down in the grass. There's tall grass on the side of the road. And I saw a all black animal with shiny white teeth. I mean, pearly white teeth. And had these, they weren't glowing. They were reflecting the light of my headlights. But it was huge. And I looked at it and I thought, man, that's an African hyena. That's what I thought I was looking at first. And I thought it was standing up. But then when I kept getting closer to it, I realized I saw the ears and I saw the tufts of hair around the ears. They were kind of rounded a little bit. They weren't pointed like a dog. They were kind of rounded like a bear. And I saw how big this thing was. And I thought, man, that's a huge bear. That's not even a dog. That's a bear. And then I realized that it wasn't on 4 legs. It was squatted down like it was on 2 legs, basically. But grass would come up to about my waist, I guess. That's how tall the grass was. And then it started moving and it gnashed its teeth at me. And it was moving like a panther. But I could see its shoulders, like how it was like crouched down, sitting down. And the way it kind of moved, it kind of slinked around a little bit. And as it's slinking around, I could catch something to my other side of the road. Like my eye caught something to the other side of the road. There was another one. So there were 2 of these things, but the other one had its back turned to me and it would not turn around. It kept just, all I saw was its back and its head was down. So I saw its shoulders and its back, and it was in the tall grass on the other side, which was odd because that's not normal animal behavior for an animal not to turn around, you know what I mean? Or even move. It was just sitting, it was like it was a rock or something, but I could clearly see it was another animal. You know, maybe it was bent down eating something. I mean, I don't know, but it was huge. And the way I can describe it, the one on the other side wasn't as pitch black. Like the color was not as dark as the one on that I could see its face. The other one was kind of more brown and it had a back like a gorilla, kind of is what it looked like. But anyway, so I spent the rest of that drive home trying to figure out what I had seen. And I didn't get home till like 2 a.m. And so I didn't want to contact anybody back at base camp, because if I had done that, it would have woken people up and stuff. So I didn't know if they were up Bigfooting or whatever that night. So I waited till the next morning and I hit up like 2 of the guys that were out there. And I said, hey, you know, this is what I saw last night. And I gave them the exact location. And I got a message back from Mark. He was like, well, that's actually somebody I know's property right there. And he's got multiple boogers on his property, which are Bigfoot. He said, and he's actually seen Dogmen on his property as well. So at that point, I had to come to terms with the fact that I think that I had seen 2 Dogmen driving past his property that night, because what I saw defied anything I had ever known. It was something that I had never, I couldn't even hardly wrap my head around it, because what I was looking at was something I had never seen before. And when we have these charts, you know, the North American Dogman Project has those charts of like the, you know, 7 different types of dogmen or whatever. It really didn't fit any of those categories other than the hyena type, because it was all black. It looked like a panther. The head was shaped more like a cane corso or some kind of like a pit bull almost. And the ears looked more like a hyena. So it was really odd. So let's just say like I was intrigued at that point. And that's when I you know, we were trying to come up with where we were going to do our next expedition. And I was like, well, hey, you know, we've got this area down here in Alabama. And I was telling the guys, like, this is a great place to go. We can go check out where I had seen those 2 creatures on the side of the road. We can also just hang out at the base camp where that guy got torn apart, you know, and let's do it. Sounds like fun. This is on wildlife management area. So we just went out to go investigate and go camp out and have fun for a weekend. And so we went and we got out there. We had, like I said, we had about 10 of us. And even one of the guys from one of my original Bigfoot research teams came out there with me. My buddy Keith came with me, met us out there. He's a wildlife biologist. So it's always good to have a scientist of some sort with us out there. But we spent a couple nights, 2 or 3 nights out there. And we were taking turn, like we were kind of, you know, staying at base camp. We had a bunch of people down at base camp, and then some of us would like walk up to these trails. And there were 2 different fields up there at the top of these trails. And there's a field down the bottom. You know, we're out there during the day, like looking for Bigfoot and Dogman sign, taking note of all the stick structures, the tree structures that we were finding. Nighttime would come, and I guess it was the last night we were there. It was dark. We all have our radios. We'd keep our CB radios on us and stuff, our BFUNs, and I was having a hard time hearing what people were saying in the radios. I couldn't understand what those guys were saying. And I was like, well, hey, so Keith was with me, and I was like, well, I think the guys are up there at the top of the hill. I know they're down here somewhere, up behind that gate. Like, let's head up that way and go, let's take our thermal and just go observe. Let's go see what's going on up there. And so we started up the trail, and we saw like some lights over to the side of where there had been some Bigfoot sign before. We saw some flashlights, and like, we don't usually use flashlights out in the field very often. We try to not use any light out there unless it's red light or green light. Never white light really. Okay. But we saw some people with some white flashlights down there by where that Bigfoot sign was, and the tree structures. And so we thought, well, those are the guys, whatever, let's just keep going past. Cause remember, I couldn't hear what they were saying on the radios. So I didn't know where they were. And we got up to the first field. Keith was seeing something weird on his thermal. He was seeing like the two of the trees were red hot, super hot down at the bottom of the tree trunks on these just two trees out of this whole field, like these big trees. He was like, I don't know, that's weird. So I lit through the thermal, saw the same thing, and we walked over there to kind of check it out, but there was nothing over there. There were no animals, there were no people. We were thinking, well, maybe the guys have been standing against a tree or something. We're just trying to figure it out. And so we decided we got bored at that area, and we decided to walk up to the top field. And that's where we encountered all the guys up there. And we were kind of confused because we thought they were down there in that bottom field where the Bigfoot sign was. But when we got up there, they said they thought that was us down there. But see, it wasn't us. It wasn't them. It wasn't us. So we're like, well, what were all those lights doing down there? We were trying to figure out like who, because there was nobody else out there. It was just us. And there was one couple that was camped out in a camper people that I had met that I knew. I actually ended up knowing people out there. I'd met them at that July get together. They were in their camper up at the top of the road. So we had exchanged phone numbers just in case anything happened, if they had any activity, I was like, just text me, call me or whatever. And so we were also keeping in touch with them a little bit throughout the weekend. But we got up to that top field, and all the guys were up there. We were trying to figure out what was going on. And then my buddy Harley had gotten hit with infrasound. He said, when we saw him, and he was down at right where those two trees had that red hot glow that were hot. Apparently he had been hit with infrasound right there in that same area. And he gotten mad. He was feeling sick. And we were just sitting there like, man, that's wild. He got hit with infrasound, not thinking it was about to happen to me too. I wasn't even thinking about it. And we're sitting there talking to the guys, and we're just trying to kind of get a game plan together. Like, hey, some of us are going to go back down to base camp, and me and Keith decided we were going to stay up there. And something was like pulling me to the side of the field up there. And I walked off by myself to this corner of the field. And right when I walked over to this corner of the field, I got sick. I started getting a pounding migraine. And it was so bad, it was making me nauseated. And then all of a sudden I started crying, and I was like bawling, like boo-hooing, crying. And I was doing, and I had no reason to cry. I don't cry. I'm not a crier like that. I don't cry, especially not in front of guys. Okay. And I just started crying, and I didn't know why, but I was also feeling sick, and my head hurt. And I thought, man, I must be super dehydrated. And I thought it was just that, like maybe my body is just like reacting to being dehydrated. And Keith, my buddy who came up from my original team, we've been friends for a long time. And he thought that he was hearing me say his name. He said, he was like, well, I heard you whispering my name. And so because he walked over and he was like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, hey, Keith, something's wrong. I was like, I've got a headache. I think I'm dehydrated. And I explained to him what was happening. He was like, well, you just got hit with infrasound, I think. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I think I'm just dehydrated. And so we ended up I kept denying it. I was like, there's no way I got hit with infrasound too. But let's just say, long story short, those guys walked back down to base camp. He and I stayed up at the top for a while. And so my stomach was hurting, and I was just like nauseated. And so we walked back down to base camp, and by that time I was so sick. And as I'm getting sick, I'm like vomiting and stuff. It was horrible. And I kept getting these like waves of being sick. And I got this one wave where I felt like I was about to vomit. And right when I got this wave, a tree started cracking. I mean, at the same exact moment, a tree right beside, not too far from where my tent was, started cracking. We hear crack, crack, whoosh. and this huge tree had just gotten either knocked over, pushed over, or it fell by itself. But we don't think it fell by itself. But it got knocked over right when I was getting hit with infrasound. And I'm positive to this day. Now I know I was definitely getting hit with infrasound. And it fell, and the guys went running towards it. And as they're screaming and running towards this tree, I'm throwing up. I'm sick. I don't feel good. I had to go lay back in my truck, and I got a message from the people up at the top that were camping up the road from us. And the woman was like, "Hey, we just saw soon after that tree fell, because they heard the tree fall too. It was really loud. They said a huge hulking figure that looked like it had its back, like a big back. It was like hunchbacked, ran across the road right in front of us from the abandoned campsite." Now, I forgot to mention there was an abandoned camp when we got there. Like somebody had just like left all their stuff there, and it had not been there 2 weeks before, according to some of our friends that live out that way. But they said this bipedal figure that was dark and hairy and hunchback ran across the road right when that tree fell. All right, so that was the last thing I remember, because I fell asleep because I was really sick. And the next morning I woke up, I was completely fine. I got messages from that couple the next morning, because we were all packing up to go home the next day. And we were trying to kind of assess everything that had happened the night before, because it was really wild. And as we're leaving, I started getting pictures. The couple that was staying in that camper up there had gone to examine that abandoned campsite where that big hulking figure had come from the night before, after that tree fell. And there were like 22 plus inch footprints all around that abandoned camp coming up the trail behind it that weren't there the day before. So like huge print. We're talking about Bigfoot footprints, but it looked like a dogman that had run across the road. Okay. By their camp. So that was like actually one of my more recent trips that I've taken recently. But I tell you what, every expedition, every time we go out in the woods, something crazy goes down. And that was one of the more exciting trips I've taken in a while out there. But we don't know the fate of those people that were in that abandoned camp that were up there. But somebody had they literally left their clothes. There was a ton of food up there, like nice gear, nice equipment, like expensive stuff. And it's not normal for people just to run out in the middle of the night and leave everything, like expensive stuff there, and then not go back for it. Something probably would either had to scare the crap out of somebody that bad to not go back and get that, because it was pretty intricate, like the stuff they had set up out there, I guess. But anyways, lots of Dogman and Bigfoot activity out there. This is in Alabama, Talladega National Forest. Also, there's a lot of like backwoods cults and stuff that are out there as well, that we have to really watch out for. And that could be another reason that there are missing people in our national parks. We did a FOIA request out there at Talladega for about a year ago, 2 years ago. There was a couple that got flagged down by two women, actually, that claimed that their car had broken down. And a gentleman thought it was a little suspicious. He pulled his truck over to go help. And his fiance stayed in the car, I believe. I don't know. She was there with him. And he just thought to grab his pew-pew and put it in his britches. Okay. And walked out there and was helping her. And he was on the phone with his dad trying to get an idea of, like, his dad knows cars better than him, I guess. And he was on the phone with his dad, and one of the women she pulled a pew-pew on him, and he pulled his out at the same time. And she was trying to get them to go into the woods. They were robbing them, and then she was going to take them out in the woods. And he ended up unalived. And anyways, it was very unfortunate. But when the police went out there, the other woman, I guess they both were injured, but the one woman had run off into the woods. And when the search team went out there with their dogs and stuff to find out where that one woman had gone, they found an encampment. According to the FOIA request, I think there were like 10 encampments actually of religious cults is what they called them. And it was interesting because it said they had witchcraft tools out there, statues and crystals and all. I don't know why crystals are witchcraft tools, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, how many other people have maybe been accosted by some of these cults that are out there? And if that woman wanted them to go out to the woods, and they were directing them out in the woods until he pulled his pew pew out, it's like, how many other people didn't make it and were never seen again because of people like that? Okay. Taking them as hostage, or stealing their vehicles or whatever. I mean, it's just really dangerous. Okay, it can be really dangerous out there, and it's not always Bigfoot or Dogman taking people. There's a lot of scary things out there in those woods.
What, the Christmas trees? Yes, you are very much correct, for sure. Some pretty legendary stuff. Wouldn't expect anything less from you. Definitely really gnarly stuff occurring out there. Before we let you tell everyone, here is some great stuff that is up and coming for you. And then we do need to allow the Cryptid Huntress access to leave the fox den so she can go monster hunting herself. Recently, my friend Danielle L. Steedman was telling me, I already knew there's a lot going on with the feral people and such, yet she's from North Carolina, and when she was younger, she said there would basically be a group of mountain people that would come down, and they looked just like Wrong Turn, more or less. And they would come down just for suspenders and boots every once in a while. They would get out of this old ice cream truck, basically, this farm truck, and they would have really bad hygiene and issues going on where they looked very creepy. I remember her saying one time, one individual was like, yikes, they stink. And someone had to be like, hey, stop. Like, you can't be saying this right now. Now, does that mean they act and participate in anything that goes on in the movies like Wrong Turn? No. I was just giving a visual example that was given to me as depiction wise. Yet, that does verify there are feral people that are out in the forest. Obviously, there's going to be different levels. Some we just mentioned, others that could just not want to be around society anymore, could be highly intellectual, highly technologically advanced, just choose to be out there. You could have other individuals that are just out trying to do nefarious things. Then you obviously specified on the cult activities. There's a lot that goes on out there. Misfortune with people. We know how, well, humans don't always make the best decisions. It's pretty easy to just YouTube some of the videos that show people's poor decisions, right? Yeah, it's quite apparent and occurs very often. Yet then you have to deal with natural predators. Then, okay, you got some of these feral people and encampments. And then you got these supposed unknown canine sightings. Really interesting stuff for sure.
The hills have eyes. Yeah, that's really wild. There's nothing wrong with living off grid. I would love to be able to live off grid one day. Okay, and I think that's what those religious cults were doing, was trying to live off grid, but on like federal land and stuff. So, yeah, just you always have to keep an eye out. Watch your six all the time. Anytime you're out in any kind of national forest or state park, even, I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're hiking, just be aware of your surroundings at all time. My team has actually documented that portal out in the meadow that we call it, at the Meadow Project. And we had a couple of our teammates that were guided over to it, and they disappeared, and then they reappeared. Their heat signatures did on the thermal. Okay, so just always be aware of your surroundings. It's very dangerous out there. And if you're going to go out in the woods, please tell somebody. I mean, and don't do what I do. Okay, I know I go out in the woods and I go searching for dogmen and stuff. Okay, I go looking for this stuff. I'm looking for trouble out there, and but it's purely for research only. You know what I mean? So purely for research, and so just don't go out chasing stuff unless you are fully equipped to protect yourself, if you know what I mean. Okay. But yeah, this has been wonderful. I'm super glad that I got to come back on and hang out with you, LordeStarfox. And we'll have to do this again soon. And you guys can always find me over on my website and my YouTube channel. Just look up the Cryptid Huntress. and I'm all over all social media sites. But yeah, I'm also I do a lot of events, public events. I just had the Molina Bigfoot Festival last week that I spoke at. I will be at I guess I'm part of a documentary called The Vanished, and we're actually talking about missing people out of the Great Smoky Mountains in that documentary, and I cover the case of Dennis Martin out of the Great Smoky Mountains. And that movie premiere is in January 31st in Glendale, Alabama, if anybody wants to come to that. And of course, I have the Western North Carolina Comic-Con coming up in February. And then in March, we have the Georgia Bigfoot Festival, or the Georgia Bigfoot Conference, actually. I think it's in Clayton, Georgia, up in North Georgia. So yeah, and I've got some more events. Those are the only ones I can think of right now. But yeah, just check out my website, thecryptidhuntress.com.
Excellent stuff right there. Love it. You'll have to keep myself and everybody posted. I do look forward to getting you back on here and also coming over to collaborate whenever you do need some assistance dealing with missing people in the good old Dogman phenomenon. Yes, to the audience, I understand no one likes ads. Yeah, if you do enjoy your content creators, small or large, those ads are strategically placed there by your content creator. It really helps out with the algorithm. Also hitting that like button, commenting, sharing around the amazing content also allows the algorithm to realize we belong with everyone that is cool as well. Like Jessica said, you can head on over to her thread, or you can check out the description with the link to the Cryptid Huntress. She is also under the playlist, the Midnight Society, and the page suggestions of the Midnight Society. Pretty easy to track her down. And yes, we will have her back on sooner than later.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
The fear in your eyes. Exquisite. What gifts have been brought to me? Once again, this vampiric relic is in the proper hands of LordeStarfox and, of course, the Midnight Society.